Bonasias, thank you for speaking with us on KTN News. Kenyans have said a lot about the election and the effect it's had on the economy. But as a man in charge, what is your assessment of the state of our economy at this point in time?
Yes, a lot have been said about it, and as you all know, certainly there have been an impact on our economy. As I have indicated several times that we had expected to have grown much faster than what we are seeing now. In fact, our estimates before election was about 5.8 or 9 thereabout. But now, after reassessing the situation because of the impacts of both elections and also the challenges that we had early in the year, which is basically drought that had a big toll on agriculture, we have now reviewed our growth to about 5%. We still think that is achievable, knowing that already first half is gone and we have the numbers. Second half is still a challenge, but we see recovery in agriculture with the harvesting beginning to happen, and continued non-agricultural sector remains strong for most of the year. So overall, the impact has been that growth has been affected because investments have also not come in as we had anticipated, and coupled with the agricultural performance, all these have been affected. So the impact of the revision of growth down is that our revenues also have not performed very well. We are now behind by about 40 billion for the first 4 months of the year, beginning July. And all these also are associated with the long period of electioneering, where activities slowed down and the collection of taxes like VAT and the like obviously were impacted. So when we look at overall assessment is that we have lost about 1% of GDP in terms of growth, and also revenue performance have slowed down to the tune of about 40 billion.
What's the knock-on effect on businesses, on people who are running their businesses, on consumer spending? Just break down what a reduction in our growth means for the everyday Kenyan.
Yeah, what it means obviously is that there have been a slowdown in economic activity, and the implication of that is that obviously jobs have also been impacted. Certainly we could say that employment and probably even loss of jobs in some sectors could happen in a situation like this. It has also slowed down our expenditure, particularly in some critical areas because of the revenue constraints that we have had. And that obviously means a lot in terms of public investments, in terms of infrastructure that we are talking about, and other activities that the government could do, which again has a link to the private sector in terms of their performance. So we have not quantified the sort of knock-on effect of that. We are in the process of looking at it, and that is why what I've just mentioned is losing 1% of GDP, losing those revenues. There are certainly indirect impacts of that certainly has weakened our performance. But all along, despite that, the fundamentals continue to be strong. What I mean by fundamentals is that if you look at our macroeconomic stability, we have continued to preserve under very difficult circumstances. Exchange rates continue to be stable. Typically, these are areas that are impacted negatively in the situation where we are now, where there's still a bit of uncertainty in some areas. Inflation at some point went up, but now is fully in control. It has come down to the targets that we have set ourselves. And generally, our external payment position has continued to be strong. Reserves continue to be at healthy levels. So those are some indicators that the economy still remains solid in terms of those underlying fundamentals.
Okay.
But obviously, business activities have been impacted because of the long periods of election.
Okay. So you've talked about, a fall in revenue. So we're hearing 50 billion. I know you've confirmed now you're saying it is 40 billion. But some say that this is a perennial problem in this country, that election or no election, that we continue to budget on revenue projections, which we almost never meet. Are we living beyond our means?
Well, what we normally do whenever we have revenue projections, which revenue shortfall, we adjust our expenditures so that we live within our means. So that has not been an issue to that extent. But yes, it's true, probably over the last 2 or so financial years, we've had that shortfall, some purely because of some anticipated shocks or assumptions that were not foreseen. Like, for example, what I've just mentioned, we didn't foresee the drought prolonging to even affecting part of this year. We didn't anticipate that the electioneering will proceed for this period. So there are some instances where there are unforeseen circumstances that has driven a wedge between our projections and actual collection. But we strive as much as possible to forecast our revenues based on the most likable situation, and we take into account the fact that there are some reforms that is happening. Okay. KRA is also undertaking some reforms, administrative and also legislative, and part of those has to be taken into account in looking at revenue. But if those reforms again do not happen, then we have a shortfall. So there are many factors that bring that. Yeah. But in terms of forecast, I think overall we have not gone beyond 5 percentage point from the forecast, which still is better. Not bad situation as it was.
Yeah. But you're talking about some of the assumptions that are made. For example, the drought. The drought was projected by the Kenya Meteorological Department. Certainly, when budgeting for the election, one would assume that you would assume the worst case scenario. If it goes to the Supreme Court, if we have to do a repeat, including what's currently happening at this moment, did Treasury not foresee these circumstances?
I'll be very surprised if you foresee that we are going to have a repeat presidential election.
Wouldn't you plan for it anyway?
But even if you, it is in the Constitution, you don't start to say that that is the likely situation that will happen. All we expect is that we of course knew that the elections were going to be done in August, and that obviously had been factored in. It was just at the beginning of the financial year. And our expectation that was going to end that year, that month, and then the rest of the 10 months of the financial year will not be impacted. But you know what happened in August 8? There was an nullification of election. And then there was a repeat, which happened on October. All those almost first half of 4 months of the year again has been lost.
So now are you now putting plans in place?
Project that.
Well, no one can project it, but it is part of the job of Treasury to just anticipate all different types of scenarios.
What we do is that we, of course, when we do the projection, there are risks. What we know that our outlook or our projection may be impacted in a negative way. And when we face that situation, we, of course, indicate that we will be taking appropriate action. When we mean by appropriate action is we readjust our expenditures to match what is now obtainable in terms of the actual revenue. So one cannot, you could anticipate some risks, but the most important is how do you mitigate those risks and how do you prepare to handle those risks. That is how normally projections are done, because you can never be always 100% in the projections.
Absolutely. But now the counties are also feeling the pinch of this revenue shortfall.
Yes.
And I know, they're now threatening to take legal action for failure to disburse the funds. And this is something they've been complaining about since the start of this financial year.
Yes.
So what is the status? I don't want to go into hyperbole, but many say, is the government broke?
The status is that we have, so far, as today, we have released about 46.2 billion since July with the counties. The challenge was that we didn't have the full instrument to release the funds. In actual sense, we are not even supposed to release even that 46 until all the instruments are in place. And what I mean is that there is the county allocation of revenue bill, which was passed. But there is, related to that is the disbursement schedule, which again has to be passed by Senate. As you all know, Senate resumed after elections somewhere. I think they started their business in September. And their first business was to pass the disbursement schedule. So again, we had lost 3 months. And because Senate was not there, there was elections. And we could not release funds if we didn't have that. But even then, since then, the disbursement schedule was passed, but had discrepancies with the law, County Allocation of Revenue Act. And then, again, that put us in an awkward situation. We could not gazette the disbursement schedule passed by Senate because they had discrepancies. Now, we continued to still fund counties, nevertheless, with that situation. Yesterday, we had a discussion with Senate to quickly make the changes in the county allocation of revenue bill so that we can tie this together with the disbursement schedule and gazette, and then enables us to give us the full instrument to disburse the funds. So some of these things have been completely beyond the Treasury, and the Council of Governors know this very well. We have been engaging in the letters and all that. So it will be really
So what do you think
ridiculous.
of their move to go to court?
No, you got to go to court first. The laws are not proper. So it's very clear that we cannot publish a disbursement schedule that is inconsistent with the law. So even if you go to court, I don't know, but you're better off correcting the law first to enable us to give you the cash and all that. But even then, as we have said, we have so far disbursed 46 because we know the challenges that they are facing through other mechanisms that will regularize once the law is in place. So because we have to do something, because the counties must run. But to say that Treasury has not been releasing and not keeping within this disbursement schedule, which is wrong, is not the right position. But take it from me, this is the situation. We were with the Senate yesterday. They have seen the urgency. I think they will be meeting probably in the course of this week to dispose that problem. And as soon as that is happening, we are ready to catch up with the disbursements that are pending.
I'd like us to focus on the debt situation. Panasias, why are we considering borrowing again? Why are we considering floating another Eurobond?
Let me tell you one thing. Borrowing is a continuous process. So you must know that first. You can't say you've stopped borrowing. It's continuous. And what I mean is that as long as you are borrowing to fill in a gap, basically some key capital expenditures that you need because your revenues cannot match those expenditures, that is in order. The thing is borrowing too much in a situation where you might enter into difficulties in the future and all that. So I think we have said that several times.
I know.
But when we say now we are borrowing, that is already programmed in our budget as we speak. The budget that will be tabled in Parliament, we have shown the deficit, how we are going to finance it, and that's been approved. So what we are doing is executing what has already been
All right. Nevertheless, Bonasius, there's a lot of concern about the rate at which we are borrowing. S&P itself, which is contracted by the government, as you have said before, considers debt the largest threat to our economy.
Yeah, as I said, their view vis-a-vis that is because they're looking at where have we reached in terms of the borrowing. What they are just indicating is that, look, this has to be managed in a manner that we don't exceed some levels. And this is what we are also very cognizant about. That's why when we say we are bringing down our deficits gradually to below 4%, is exactly what we are dealing with. That is how you address it. By us committing to a fiscal plan that ensures that deficits are lowered and borrowing are reduced is exactly what we are doing. So there's nothing new in that S&P assessment. Is exactly what we have told them. But it's only they have reported it to mean as if the government has reached levels which are dangerous. Yes, we were saying that we are, of course, we know that our limits are this, and we are managing it to live within those limits. So we are consistent with that. There is no big issue about it.
So you don't think it's a threat, but
it's not a threat at all.
Some are worried.
Take it from me.
Some are worried by the statement that you made recently when you were discussing this, saying that some of the money will also go towards liquidity management. Isn't this against the PFM Act? We're only supposed to borrow for development. Liquidity management could mean what? Recurrent expenditure?
No, what it means, I think I need to clarify. You know, when you're making, liquidity management is in a way lengthening some of your maturities. In a way, say debt matures today, and that was probably a 2-year debt, and you have gotten funds that are long term. It's like you restructure it in a way, maybe to put it in a simple way, and take up 10 or 20-year borrowing. So what you have done is taken a longer term debt and retire a maturing debt. That is just purely liquidity management to give you space to finance other expenditures. So that is what it means.
But is that what we're doing with this one that you're talking about, the Eurobond that you want to float? Because we do know of that debt that was maturing in October, and then that's been moved to March 2018?
I think what was reported in the papers is wrong.
What is the correct position?
I think the person who was reporting was struggling to understand what I meant. What I meant is first, we are dealt with the issue of the syndicated loan. I don't know where he's bringing about. Those are things that we finished in October. What we are saying is going forward. What the question was posed to me is that are we still likely to float a Eurobond going forward? I said yes. We are in, when we entered the market the first time in 2004, we were there to stay, to participate and always take advantage of the international capital markets to raise funds for infrastructure development and what other countries do for liquidity management, lengthening. What do you mean liquidity management is exactly what I've said. You may want to borrow to retire a debt that you have used for
So in other words, in simple terms, we are borrowing to pay another debt.
You can call it that way. You can, but that is exactly paying to pay a debt that you are using it for infrastructure.
So we're borrowing from one debt to pay another one.
That is
borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, essentially.
No. Yeah, I think that is you're putting it in a way that what I've just said is that you can lengthen your maturities depending on the prices you are getting. If you get a cheaper 10 or 15-year bond, why not retire an expensive 2-year? That is purely liquidity management done by anybody, including as an individual. When you borrow and you find that somebody has given you cheap money, you pay off the expensive one and get a cheaper one. So that is.
So what are the differences?
That is the practice.
So what are the differences
globally
in the rate? Because I think perhaps that is what would make us understand this.
The rates now will come at the time. That's why I mentioned that we will continue to participate in the international capital market. At that time, when we want to go to the market to issue another sovereign bond, we look at the rates prevailing. If they're much cheaper than what we
So are we ever going to solve the problem then? Because we're taking, as you say, cheaper loans to settle more expensive ones.
As I say,
but it just seems like it's this, never-ending cycle of debt.
What we are saying is that the same stock remains. And we are, of course, repaying as others mature. Not all of them are refinanced, so to speak. Some have to be, when they mature and we are not refinancing, we dispose of. And that means a reduction in our debt stocks over time. So you need to differentiate an existing stock and new debt and how they play with a stock. So the stock is, when they mature, you retire, we feel, and we have been paying off many debts. We don't refinance. Every day, by the way, even as we speak today, there is a debt maturing either from a multilateral partner, a development partner, or any other debt, and we pay. So that means debt is coming down. And if we take up a new one, it adds the stack. That is how it works.
But basically, our fiscal deficit is going up, isn't it?
A deficit, as I indicated,
to 8%.
Last year we closed at 8.4. Now this year we are programming at 6.4, excluding SGR. Including SGR, about 7.5 thereabout.
So it is almost 8%. Does this include SGR? Why are you excluding SGR?
6.4 and 8 is different. It's 2 percentage points down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and we are and over the medium term, we are looking at up to coming down to about 4%.
But how will you get it down to 6.4%, considering there's the revenue targets? We are short 40 to 50 billion.
Yeah.
Growth has been revised downwards. So that means there's less revenue. We'll definitely go into more borrowing. There's all of this expenditure that has been planned for January 2018, which is part of this financial year.
Yeah.
There's the free secondary education that the administration is planning. There's funding, possibly a repeat election. We don't know which way it will go. So how do you honestly expect it to stay at 6.4 and not be at 8%?
Precisely, we have already done that in the supplementary one. If you look at the supplementary one, we have taken all those into account. And we have kept a deficit at the levels I've just mentioned. What we have done is to institute an austerity measures. We have slowed down, we have created space, fiscal space in the already planned expenditures.
What are some of those austerity measures?
There's clearly in the recurrent expenditures are things to do with the domestic travel, foreign travel, hospitality, advertisement, and the like. Those ones have been scaled down significantly. And some of the domestically financed expenditures we have also slowed down to give way for the emerging priorities. So that's how you do it, so that you live within the same framework that we have put by displacing other expenditures with the new one. So that is exactly what we have done in supplementary one. And that is already done, and we will continue. If we do another supplementary two, we will adjust depending on how revenues are performed and what are other emerging pressures that we have. So that is a continuous process that has to happen.
You've mentioned SGR, and you say you've factored it into this one. When are Kenyans likely to see proper full dividends of this railway? Because this has been touted as one of the biggest infrastructure projects we have taken in the country to date. When do we start? When does it start to sort of trickle down? When do I feel it? When does the lady selling vegetables?
Have you not traveled to Mombasa by train? You should, but already Kenyans are already feeling it by cheaper transportation to Mombasa. It's costing only 700. Down to other modes of transportation, which has been flight and buses and private vehicles. So there are many. If you go to the terminal here in Embakasi, it's a queue. So definitely it means that there is a benefit on the transporting people to both Mombasa to Nairobi. We are now in the process of getting cargo full cargo into it. That is now where more benefits will come in by way of faster movement of containers from Mombasa to Nairobi.
When do we expect the cargo to be up and running?
I believe we are looking at next month, and by January it should be fully operational. I think the delay is because the inland container terminal, which is under construction, is what has delayed. But as soon as that is ready, which I believe should be ready in a month's time or so, all the containers will come here. So all the manufacturers in Nairobi, obviously, whose cargoes are usually destined to Nairobi, mostly 70%, by the way, that goes by road, are destined to Nairobi. So all those will enjoy quicker delivery and, of course, cheaper. And related to that, how many other vehicles, lorries, will be out of the road from Mombasa to Nairobi? Of course, having the benefits of now lesser jams in this road, and also faster movement if you want to drive to Mombasa, and again, the wear and tear on the road. I could mention a lot of benefits, obviously, but it takes time. You need to, this have to happen. You don't expect you launch the railway now and get the full benefit, but gradually and gradually, as people use that mode of transportation, then the benefits become clear.
So, I mean, a lot has been said, and we started off with this at the beginning of our conversation about the effect that the electioneering period has had on our economy, the revenue shortfalls. But as you rightly said, you know, for a number of successive years, we have not met our revenue target. Yeah. And some would say that it is a cop-out, you know, blaming, it's a cop-out, blaming, you know, our current economic situation on the election, that there are some serious structural problems with our economy. Neglect of the informal sector, for one, the agricultural sector, manufacturing as well, which, as you know, is labor intensive and will be able to mop up all this unemployment.
Yeah, actually, the point you're raising is what the focus now is, what the government is going to focus on. And rightly so, this is the right time to focus on issues of manufacturing, how to make agriculture more productive. Reason is that you have to do first things first. For manufacturing to take off, you needed all what I've just mentioned. You needed good roads, you needed faster transportation, you needed lower cost of power and the like. These ones were not there by 2012. The cost of power was about 18 cents per kilowatt. Transporting to Mombasa took you almost a day, you know, to bring a container. Even to go to Kampala, it took 21 days and the like. Now it is 3 days, it's 4 days. Those had to be fixed first. You can't tell me that you can get a manufacturer to come and relocate to Nairobi here, and it takes almost a day or 2 days to bring a container from Mombasa to Nairobi, and yet it takes only probably few days to bring it from China to Mombasa. So the issue here we are saying is that the government over the last 4 years or so had to invest in this infrastructure. Now that is done. Of course, we'll continue because we still have deficit in that area. But now your question comes in. The focus, and you've seen government policies now, even the manifesto from the Jubilee and all that, is looking at manufacturing. And this is the right time to obviously focus in it. And we are now looking at what are the areas of intervention in manufacturing to get the private sector invest more on this. And we have identified very clearly the labor-intensive manufacturing, leather, textile, constructions, and the like. These are the areas now the government is going to put more emphasis on this, and this is where we expect more job creations to happen going forward. Agriculture, yes, very important. There's a lot of work now going on the agro-processing, value chains, and the like. These are where the jobs are. But you couldn't do that if you didn't have properly security, you didn't have infrastructure, you didn't have all that. So what we are saying is that we have laid the base for now coming in with all this intervention that will deal with some of the bigger challenges that we have had. we had to do this because previously it has been ignored, and we had to deal with it head-on. Otherwise, we will be talking of going around promoting infrastructure, promoting tourism, yet there is nothing on the ground to support those investors to come in.
My final question to you is about perception and a lot of the people feeling that this has been a really tough year for them. I don't know if you had a chance to see the tweet by CS Adan Mohammed, who says, you know, they don't have any records to date of businesses shutting down this year, either due to the election or other factors that have affected the economy. And the responses were quite stark. A lot of people saying, you don't live where I live. You do not understand the sort of atmosphere that we're in. People are worried. People have this perception. People are feeling the pinch. What assurances can we have from your office, from the administration going forward, that this is going to change? And why does there seem to be that disconnect?
Yeah, first, yes, certainly there have been a pinch. I'm not saying that Kenyans have not suffered despite what I've just mentioned. In fact, if it wasn't that the foundations of the economy were strong, we would even have had worse impact. And thanks that we had put in place those strong foundations. Otherwise, the situation would have been very bad. But yes, because of businesses adopting a wait and see and the prolonged uncertainty and all that, yes, obviously, that has impacted business activity. And related to that, the common mwananchi obviously has felt that. And that's the faster we do away or conclude all this election, and elections shouldn't take this period of time. That's why it should be things that should be done once and finished. And then people get to business and move on. But if you leave people for a long period in an uncertainty mode, then
but the Constitution allows for that process, doesn't it?
It allows, but it
as you said in a previous interview, that the Constitution is in play, is in force.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to say, and I want to repeat that this is a very good thing that we are following the Constitution properly. I think it's how we play with it. How are we utilizing the Constitution? Are we doing it rightly, or we are probably overstretching things there? And to me, the Constitution is very clear. I mean, after election, there's time to challenge. That's why it's put 7 days and another 14 days, so 21 days.
So do you think it's
so
being
if you
misused?
finish within 21 days an election, that is a good time to finish.
Okay. In what way do you think it might be misused? The boycott, for example?
Well, I mean, it really depends on how people look at it. When we see it ourselves, it's very clear. It's clear that you do this in 7 days, 21 days, and then if there are, of course, what happened where the Supreme Court ruled and say we go back, we have another time period of 60 days. So it's very clear, and the Constitution anticipated that you don't want a prolonged electioneering period. And that has to be done, and that is why there is a commission that is supposed to manage it within the time frame and finish, so that other things like the economy do not suffer. But if you just have it as if it is just a luxury to do all these elections, that's not the right way to look at it.
Do you think that's the attitude that's being adopted at this point?
Probably it is, but we really need to be very clear. The Constitution put these things very clear for us to follow, and so that we don't have the suffering that Kenyans are having. If we continue to have this mode for 2 years, where will we be after 2 years? It's not the right place where we want to go.
And part of that electioneering is a call for a boycott to services and products of certain companies in this country that are claimed by the opposition to be beneficiaries of the state.
Well, to me, I think first it is not a right thing to do. at this particular time, because as I indicated elsewhere, this is actually hurting the same persons that you're trying to, help. And if you think of boycotting an item, which I find it first ridiculous, whether it's really possible even to happen. In a way.
Which item do you think it is impossible to boycott?
Well, the thing is, do you think that, when you go buy an item, you buy because you need it, and it's made available by many ways, by the people who act as supplying that good and to people demand. In a liberalized environment where people have choices to make and all that, and based on preference, you cannot tell people to prefer these, and it's a personal choice, even if it's influence. So that's why it doesn't work. It only works if that is the only item available, and all that. But people have freedom of choice.
So will it affect the economy? Because like you say, there are choices. If you don't want to use one mobile service provider, there's going to be another. If jobs will be lost in one, they'll be absorbed by the other.
Obviously, yes, it will happen that way. What we are saying is that there is always, when we make a choice over another one, it's providing some service. The other one is providing probably superior services and all that. So if you want to go to an inferior service, it's a cost to you on that. So that's why investments...
Are you saying Airtel is an inferior service?
No, I'm not,
or other companies other than Bitco and Brookside are inferior services?
The reason why you choose something is because it could be superior than another one. Yeah? So I'm not implying that way. Okay. But what I'm just saying is that when you go and shop and you choose this item over the other, you have chosen yourself as a consumer because you think you prefer this. But now to
so
somebody to tell you... So will there be an
overall effect from what you're saying? It sounds like, the overall effect won't be too detrimental. The effect can come if this service is an essential service for a particular, for Kenyans, and you are telling them, look, don't buy, and then Kenyans suffer not to have that service, which they need it for their own. So will Kenyans suffer?
For their own progress.
Will they suffer as a result of this point?
Of course you will suffer if say, for example, let's take a product that is widely consumed by Kenyans, and then you end up saying that they should not consume that product, and then they need it for their own progress. Let's take, okay, maybe we take the Safaricom, for example, because it's widely mentioned. It's already helping you to pay a worker at home. So you are telling that worker will not now enjoy inclusivity in financial services because you're doing, who will suffer? Isn't it the worker who was enjoying that inclusiveness with the technology that have been advanced by a particular product that's available to you? So that's what basically what I mean. It's going to impact.
Do you think it's illegal?
Huh?
Do you think it's against the law, the call for the boycott of products and services?
Oh, to an extent of probably sabotaging sort of an economy, maybe. But to tell somebody, if I tell you don't buy this and you follow, it's not illegal because you have followed a choice. You have followed my choice. I've chosen for you. If you want to subscribe to that and refuse yourself to use your own personal decision to choose on your own that I want this, then that is where the problem is. It's not illegal, but I mean, you're just going to suffer yourself at the personal gain of somebody who has told you not to do that.
Anything you're planning to do about it? Any measures?
About the boycott?
Yeah.
Well, we are yet to see what it means. To me, at this particular point, I don't think we expect any any consequences as such. When it happens, obviously, we'll take appropriate action.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Asante,
yes,
asante,
yes.
asante.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.